Bavaria, 48,000 years ago. You are standing over a cave lion. You killed it a minute ago with a spear made of wood. It went in through the left side of the abdomen through the organs and stopped against the third rib. The animal weighs over 300 kilograms. A minute ago, it was the most dangerous thing in Europe. And you're going to eat it. Of course you are. You're hungry, and there are 300 kilos of meat cooling in the snow. Now walk into any shop on Earth today. Beef, pork, chicken, lamb, fish, a dozen animals under glass, and every one of them ate plants for a living. No lion, no wolf, no bear, no tiger, no hyena. You have never once stood at that counter and decided against the lion. Nobody taught you that. Apparently nobody had to. So what happened between that spear and this shelf? Let's be clear about the word first, because everything depends on it. A carnivore is an animal that makes its living by killing and eating other animals. Not an animal that happens to eat meat. A lot of animals do that. A carnivore is one whose whole body is built around it. Wolves, lions, tigers, bears, hyenas, seals, crocodiles, eagles. Now look at what we actually eat. Cattle, sheep, goats, pigs, chickens. Tens of billions of animals a year. Cattle, sheep, and goats eat nothing but plants. Pigs and chickens will eat meat if you let them, but on a farm, they're constantly fed grain and soy. So every animal in the modern food supply is raised as a plant eater. And apparently there is no commercial land carnivore meat farming anywhere on Earth. Not one operation. We do farm mink and fox as carnivores at enormous cost for the skins. We farm the coat and bin the steak. Same blank space in every meat case on the planet. Nobody signed anything. And it isn't squeamishness. Humans eat insects, clay, bark, the lining of a sheep's stomach, in bad years each other. Apparently disgust was never the thing that stopped us. So the question isn't why don't we eat carnivores? We do sometimes. People eat bear, people eat crocodile, people eat seal. The real question is stranger. Why has no human society anywhere in 2 million years ever turned a carnivore into a food supply the way we did with cattle and sheep and pigs? That answer is older than our culture, older than us. And you can see the first piece of it on the bones of that lion. Apparently, yes. The skeleton came out of the ground at Siegsdorf in 1985. In 2023, a team re-examined it and published in scientific reports. Cut marks on 2 ribs, several vertebrae, the left femur. The researchers describe careful works. The animal opened up the organs, taken out the rib cage undamaged. Somebody knew what they were doing. It's the oldest direct evidence of a large predator being hunted by any human relative. And apparently it wasn't a one-off. Cut-marked lion bones turn up at Grandolina in Spain, at Bolomore Cave at Chépignon in France. Our relatives had been butchering big carnivores for a very long time. So there's your answer. If an ancient human killed a lion, they ate the lion, but read the details. The lion was old and in poor condition. The team's conclusion is that it was killed opportunistically. Hunters found an animal that couldn't defend itself. Then they left the carcass where it fell and walked away. That's the whole pattern 48,000 years early. Humans ate carnivores whenever one happened to fall. They never once built a supply out of them. Something constantly turned every successful hunt into a one-off. It isn't in the bones, it's in the arithmetic. Here's the arithmetic. It's the most important idea in this video, so let's go slowly. Energy on this planet starts with plants. A plant takes sunlight and turns it into leaf. A cow eats the leaf and turns some of it into cow. A lion eats the cow and turns some of that into lion. The word for those steps is trophic levels. Plants are level 1. Animals that eat only plants are level 2. Animals that eat the plant eaters are level 3. Every level is one step further from the sunlight. Now the part that matters. At every step, almost everything is lost. In 1942, an ecologist called Raymond Lindemann studied a small lake in Minnesota and measured how much energy actually makes it from one level to the next. Apparently nobody had done it properly before. The answer roughly was 1/10. On land, it's usually between 5 and 10%. So apparently it works like this. Picture 100 kilos of grass. That grass will build you about 10 kilos of antelope. And those 10 kilos of antelope will build you about 1 kilo of lion. The other 99 kilos didn't vanish. The animals constantly burned it, walking around, staying warm, staying alive. 1 kilo of lion costs 100 kilos of grass. 1 kilo of antelope costs 10. Look at what that does to a landscape. A field feeds a herd. The herd feeds a handful of predators, and the handful stays a handful forever no matter how much grass there is. In 2015, a team led by Ian Hatton published this in Science. As a law, the more prey there are, the proportionally fewer predators. Run the numbers on the Serengeti, 250,000 tons of grazing animals, maybe 3,000 lions, 1 part in 500. So a carnivore is rare. And getting close enough to kill one means getting dangerously close to the thing built to kill. A carnivore is not a food source. A carnivore is a lottery ticket that fights back. Apparently, though, scarcity is a solvable problem. Humans solved it for every other animal they wanted more of. They farmed it, so why not this one? And here's the question. Everybody actually wants answered. If we turned a wolf into a dog and fed it scraps, why can't we do that to a tiger? There are 2 walls. The first one is money. A true carnivore constantly needs meat, roughly 5 to 8 kilograms of animal feed for every kilogram it puts on. So to farm one, you first have to farm everything it eats. You raise the herd, then you don't eat the herd, you could just eat the herd, which leads straight to the obvious idea. Don't feed it meat. Feed it grain like we feed the pigs. And apparently that's exactly where the second wall is. The second wall isn't money. It's biology, and biology doesn't negotiate. Some carnivores are what biologists call obligate carnivores. Obligate meaning no choice. Over millions of years of eating nothing but meat, their bodies quietly stopped making things they could constantly get from a carcass. Why build a factory for something delivered fresh every day? Apparently cats are the clearest case, and a lion is a cat. A cat cannot make enough taurine, an amino acid found only in animal tissue. Without it, the heart muscle weakens into failure and the retina degenerates until the animal goes blind. A cat cannot take beta-carotene, the orange pigment in a carrot, and turn it into vitamin A the way you and I can. It has to eat vitamin A that another animal already made. It can't build vitamin B3 from plant protein either. So put a lion on a diet of corn, and it doesn't just get thin, its heart fails and it goes blind. Which brings us to the dog, and this is my favorite fact in the whole story. The wolf pulled it off, not by being trained, by being rebuilt. There's a gene called AMY2B that makes the enzyme for digesting starch. In 2013, Eric Axelson's team published the dog genome against the wolf genome in Nature and found that wolves carry 2 copies of it. Dogs carry a stack of them, commonly around 10, sometimes 20 or more. Dogs also gain changes in 2 other genes for handling starch and sugar. So dogs weren't persuaded to eat maize. Their bodies were rewritten to be able to over thousands of years by wolves who hung around human rubbish heaps and bred with the ones who could stomach it. Apparently the Aztec Tachichi and the Hawaiian poi dog fattened on maize and taro paste were only possible because that rewrite had already happened. Humans never solved the carnivore problem. They got handed one carnivore that had solved it itself. You cannot do that to a tiger. Not in a lifetime, not in 100. Which explains the lion. It doesn't explain the other thing. It doesn't explain why the carnivores people did eat kept making them sick. Energy gets smaller going up the ladder. Apparently some things do the opposite. They stack. Here's the idea. A trace of mercury in seawater gets absorbed by a speck of plankton. A small fish eats 1,000 specks of plankton and keeps the mercury from all 1,000 because mercury doesn't break down and that the body can't flush it. A bigger fish eats 100 of those small fish, and on it goes constantly all the way up. Scientists call it biomagnification. Multiply by roughly 5 to 10 at every rung, which means a carnivore isn't meat. A carnivore is a container holding everything the animals below it ate. Take vitamin A. Vitamin A poisoning in humans was first described in Arctic explorers who ate the livers of polar bears and seals. A polar bear spends its life eating seals that spent their lives eating fish, and its liver ends up carrying vitamin A at tens of thousands of times the concentration in a cow's liver. A piece the size of your palm will poison you. In 1597, on Novaya Zemlya, Willem Barents's crew ate some. The record describes their skin coming off from head to toe, Apparently, Arctic peoples had known that for generations. Eat the bear, bury the liver, then the parasites. Apparently, this is the cleanest proof the latter is real. Trichinella is a worm that lives curled up inside muscle, and there is exactly one way to catch it: eat that muscle, which means plant eaters essentially never carry it. A cow has no way in, but a bear, a walrus, a cougar, a wolverine, a wild boar, a seal, they constantly eat other animals, so they collect the worms of every infected animal they've ever eaten. And these aren't historical numbers. Somewhere between 1 and 24% of black bears in Canada and Alaska carry it, and rates run higher in strict carnivores like polar bear cougar and wolverine. In Alaska, bear and walrus meat caused 227 human cases between 1975 and 2017. Of 7 American outbreaks between 2016 and 2022, bear meat was the source in most of them. And here's the detail that changes everything. In 2022, 9 relatives shared a meal of bear meat from Saskatchewan. It had been frozen for 45 days, then grilled rare. 6 of them fell ill, and 2 of those 6 had eaten only the vegetables that were cooked in the same pan. The Arctic species of this worm survives being frozen solid for months. The only thing that reliably kills it is cooking the meat to 74 degrees. So rare, expensive, biologically unswitchable, poisonous, and full of worms. Which raises an awkward question about the tuna in your sandwich. Apparently humans eat carnivores by the million tons. Tuna, swordfish, shark, cod, every one of them a hunter. Crocodiles and alligators are farmed on 4 continents. Bears are hunted by the tens of thousands a year and eaten as a delicacy. Apparently the rule breaks in salt water. And it breaks for the same reason it exists. Ocean food chains run 5 or 6 levels deep. On land, you get 3, maybe 4. The difference is the plants. A tree locks its energy into wood and fiber that almost nothing can digest, while the plants of the ocean are microscopic and get eaten and replaced constantly. More levels means the hunters near the top are genuinely abundant. Abundant enough to be worth catching, and nobody has to feed them. The ocean does that for free. So we take them. And crocodile farming, the one land exception that only works because a crocodile lies motionless for days and burns almost nothing. It's still expensive. It stays a luxury. But biomagnification doesn't care that the rule bent. A sardine low on the ladder carries under 500ths of a part per million of mercury. Swordfish, shark, and big-eyed tuna run around 1 to 1.5, 20 to 30 times higher. The FDA and the EPA list those exact species as choices to avoid for pregnant women and for children. Apparently that advisory isn't a health warning, it's an invoice. It's the food chain billing us for a rule we broke. On land, the rule held so long that people stopped experiencing it as a rule at all. They started experiencing it as something else. The Ainu of northern Japan practiced ayomante. A bear cub was captured, raised inside the village, then ritually killed and eaten, but not as dinner. The bear was a god visiting the human world, and the ceremony was how you sent it home. Apparently bear ceremonies like it turn up right across the northern hemisphere, from Finland to Siberia to the Pacific Northwest. Look at the lion and tiger trade now. Bones, organs, and skins constantly. Over 90% of it is medicine and status. Almost nobody buys the muscle. And then there's the counterproof. Paris under siege, 1870. Leningrad, 1941 to 1944. People ate the dogs, then the cats, then the carnivores in the zoo. Apparently the taboo was never discussed. It's a price. And starvation pays it every single time. Twice in the last 100 years, we decided the rule didn't apply to us. The first time we farmed a carnivore anyway. Salmon, and a salmon is a hunter. It only works by catching wild fish, grinding them up, and feeding them to the fish in the pen. The fleets that do this constantly anchovy sardine whiting pull in something like 1/6 of everything caught in the ocean. In 2024, a study in Nature Food ran the numbers on Norwegian salmon farms. Of 9 nutrients tracked, 6 came out higher in the wild fish going into the feed than in the salmon coming out. Ironically, we pay the latter's tax and get back something worse than what we put in. The second time was worse than that. We took cattle animals that had eaten grass for every generation there has ever been and fed them meat and bone meal. That means the leftovers of slaughtered animals cooked down and stirred back into feed constantly herd after herd. It was cheap protein. Apparently it made sense on a spreadsheet. Apparently what came back was not a virus and not a bacterium. It was a prion. A prion is just a protein, the same stuff your body is made of bent into the wrong shape. And a protein bent the wrong way, it makes the proteins it touches bend the same way like a rumor. You can't kill it because it was never alive. Cooking doesn't stop it. Disinfectant doesn't stop it. It slowly turns a brain spongy full of holes, and there is no treatment. In cattle, they called it BSE, mad cow disease. Britain identified it in 1986. The epidemic peaked in 1992 at 37,000 confirmed cases in a single year. Over 4 million cattle were slaughtered. In people, it's called variant CJD, and it has killed 178 in the UK. The first was Stephen Churchill. He was 19. We spent 2 million years learning not to move meat up the ladder. It took one generation of accountants to try it. The answer came back as a disease that puts holes in the brain. So, where are we actually standing on this ladder? Remember the levels. 1 for plants, 2 for the plant eaters, 3 for the animals that eat them, 5 for something like a killer whale. In 2013, a team led by Sylvain Bonhomme worked out the answer for us and published it in PNAS. Globally, humans sit at 2.21. Ironically, that's the same rung as an anchovy, barely above the cow. The animal that is certain it sits at the top of the food chain eats, on average, like the small silver fish it grinds up to feed its salmon. And the number has been constantly climbing as the world eats more meat. Another researcher replied in the same journal arguing we're apex predators, regardless not by diet, but by what we do to ecosystems. He's right too. We rule the ladder. Apparently we just don't eat from the top of it. Honestly, the part that stays with me isn't the lion. It's that the rule kept working for 2 million years without a single person understanding why. Apparently nobody knew about trophic levels or taurine or worms curled up in muscle. They just knew that one isn't food. We never learned to eat carnivores, so we learned to grow the animals that eat grass instead. And that failure is the reason farming exists. It's the reason cities exist. It's the reason you're not out there right now hungry looking for an old lion. So, next time you're standing in front of that glass, look at what's there. Every animal behind it turns something you can't eat into something you can. Then look at the space beside them, the one you've never noticed in every shop in every country your whole life. That's the oldest food safety rule ever written. Apparently nobody had to teach it to you. You think you're choosing dinner. You're eating inside a boundary drawn before your species had a name. More of these on the channel if you want them.